Chapter 8, the Dollar Merchandise Plan Part 2. And you will learn planning stocks. So after you estimate sales, the next step in merchandise planning is to plan stocks. Stocks are a big part of your monetary value and also related to your sales as well as your merchandise purchases. So the buyer determines the amount of stock needed at the beginning of each month to meet planned sales. And end of month stock for 1 month should equal to the beginning of the month stock for the following month. So for example, your end of month stock for January will be same as your beginning of the month stock for February. And retailers use a variety of methods to plan stocks. And we're going to cover the 3 methods that you can calculate these stocks. First, weeks of supply method. And lots of retailer who has an item, their sales not fluctuated that much, they're going to use this method. And also you talk about the basic stock method and stock to sales ratio method. Retailer use different method depending on types of their stores. And also retailer don't want to have like too much stocks or too less item. So once again, it's really important to make a good plan about your stock. Before we talk about these 3 methods, let's talk about the important concept called as stock turnover. Stock turnover is an important tool in evaluating efficient use of capital invested in inventory. And you can use this stock turnover based on retail or cost or unit. And this term is also called as stock turn rate. And this term is defined as the number of times the average stock is sold during a given period of time in relation to the sales for the same period. So if you have like a higher stock turnover, it means that you sold the merchandise a lot and you had to replenish your floor with the new merchandise more often. But if you have like a low stock turnover rate, that means that you don't really have to replenish your floor that much. And this stock turnover can be figured for any period of time, but usually for the retailer, they get this number for 1 year or 6 months. For your merchandise plan, you see this as 6 months plan. Then you can have this 1 stock turnover for your 6 months plan or for a year plan. And let's look at how you can calculate this stock turnover. Your stock turnover can be calculated as net sales at retail for period divided by average stock at retail for period. So you are using this net sales again here. And you need to calculate this average stock to get your stock turnover. There are 2 different ways to get this average stock. First is with the stock amount. So there will be your total stock, beginning of the month stock for each month or for 6 months and end of month stock for 1 month and divided by number of months in the period plus 1. And once again, you did this in the previous chapter for Jim Roy calculation. So you can look at the example again. And also another way to calculate the average stock is gonna be net sales divided by stock turnover. So let's look at the example. Figure the stock turnover at retail for a period of 1 month given the following information. $32,000 beginning of the month stock at retail and $38,000 end of month stock at retail and $14,000 net sales for the month. Then can you calculate the stock turnover? So what's gonna be the first step? So you need to calculate your average inventory. And since you know your net sales, so you can calculate your stock turnover. So let's calculate the average stock first. And in this case, you have information for 2 months. Even though you have a 1 month information, your end of month will be same as your beginning of the month for the following month. So what you can do, your BOM stock plus EOM stock divided by 2. Then you will get the average stock for month. So that will be $32,000 plus $38,000 divided by 2. Then you got this $35,000 as your average inventory. And what's gonna be the next step? Since you know the net sale, you can calculate your stock turnover. That will be your net sales divided by average stock. So that will be 14,000 divided by 35,000. Then what you got? It's gonna be 0.4. So you can say that your stock turnover is 0.4. So once again, if you have a high number of stock turnover, you're quickly replenishing your floor with the new inventory and new stock. But if you have a low number like this, that means that you don't really replenish the store with the new merchandise that much. Okay, so your stock turnover can be also calculated at cost and unit. And if you want to figure out your stock turnover at cost, this is often used by companies that keep record at cost. Then you have both stock and sales in at cost. So if you want to calculate your stock turnover at cost, then you need to keep or the record about the cost for stock and sales. Then you can calculate this stock turnover at cost. And also you can figure out your turnover by unit. And this method is used in companies with large or high priced items, because it's gonna be easy to keep track of those with the high priced item, checking with the unit. And both stock and sales must be kept in units if you want to calculate your stock turnover by unit. But once again, you can calculate your stock turnover with the same formula that you learned with retail and cost and unit. And your turnover rates depends on types of merchandise. So for example, like this high-end department store, maybe they are not selling them many items every day compared to the grocery store. So maybe their turnover rate will be a little bit lower. Or if you think about this grocery store, they're gonna have like higher turnover, like there are more people coming every day. So you have to think about types of merchandise, frequency of purchases by customer, also your store policies and purchasing will influence your turnover rate. And you also need to think about the advantages or disadvantages of this fast, rapid turnover. So some advantages of rapid turnover will be reduction in handling expenses. So if you don't have to get much information and keep it for a long time, you don't have to worry about these handling expenses for this large amount, and you will have more fresher item for customer because you're quickly replenishing your floor with the new merchandise, and you don't need to have that much markdown, pure markdown, because you're selling faster. You don't really have to mark things down. But also disadvantages you need to think about, that will increase cost of handling goods and keeping record, because you have like keep changing inventory. So you need to keep the record of this. So that's gonna be harder than company with the low turnover. And if you have stock outs, that means that you're out of stock. If you don't have that item that consumers looking for, then that will influence your sale. So you will lose the sale. So you have to think about that as well. Let's look at this example now to figure out your average stock. So figure out your average stock when net sales are $55,000 and the stock turnover is 3.5. And this one is easier. Then what you can do is another way to calculate your average stock. That's gonna be your net sales divided by stock turnover. So 55,000 divided by 3.5, then you will get your average stock as $15,714. Okay, so you learn how to calculate your average stock and stock turnover in this part. And now let's talk about your method to calculate the planning stocks. first one is gonna be weeks of supply method. This weeks of supply method plan will be defined as the planning stock, whereby the needed inventory is equal to the sales for a specific number of weeks. And this method is often used for the grocery store, where they often calculate their stock amount based on the number of weeks. And number of weeks supply is to be kept on hand during a period is dependent on the rate of stock turnover required for the store or department. So here's a way you can calculate weeks of supply. So what you're doing, you're calculating your planning inventory, planning stock based on these weeks of supply. You can calculate it as number of weeks in the period divided by your stock turnover for the period. And let's look at this example. So if net sales for the spring season are planned at 280,000 and 280, and a stock turnover of 5 times during the season is desired, how many weeks of supply should be on hand at all times? So how many weeks of supply you need it? That's how you calculate it. So let's go ahead and do this first. Weeks of supply will be 26 weeks. Oh, by the way, before we continue that, we said, you have 26 weeks in 6 months. And this example told you that it's the spring season. So spring season means the 6 months, right? So you're going to use this spring season, the 6 months, and 26 weeks in 6 months for this calculation. So 26 weeks divided by desired stock turnover, and which was 5. So you calculated these weeks of supply first, and then you can calculate your average weekly sales. So that will be 5.2 weeks of supply need on hand every week. So you quickly need to replenish this every 5.2 weeks to get the merchandise to the floor. And then you can calculate average weekly sales. That is gonna be your planned sales for the period divided by number of weeks in the period. So that's gonna be your average weekly sales. So now you're calculating your average sales for the week, right? So what you're gonna do, that's gonna be your planned sales for the period divided by number of weeks, right? So that will be your planned sale of 280,000 and 280 divided by 26. So your average weekly sales will be 10,780. So this is the way. So some types of retailer, like I said, who are not really influenced by the fluctuation of the sales that much, they're gonna use this weeks of supply method. So based on the weekly sales, right? And then you can look at another the method now, called as basic stock method. This method indicates the minimum stock that should be maintained at all times. So this method, you're gonna have the same basic stock added to each month's stock to calculate the amount of stock for the month. And it is used with the merchandise that has stock turnover of 6 tons or less per year. So for the company have the stock turnover of 6 tons or less per year, you will use this. And this is appropriate for departments with a high proportion of non-fashion merchandise, something like, not really fashion items. And here is the method to calculate your basic stock method. So basic stock can be calculated as sales for the month plus basic stock. And your basic stock is gonna be average stock minus average monthly sales. And also it can be calculated as the sales for the season divided by sales stock turnover for the season. And once again, the concept of this basic stock though, that's gonna be you're adding the same amount of the stock, this basic stock amount, to your each month's stock inventory. Then that's gonna be how much you need for the inventory for each month or for the season, right? And if you look at the example, it's gonna be easier to understand. And let's look at the second example here. So a department has a planned stock turnover of 4 and planned sales of 160,000 for a 6-month season. Plan the BOM stock for April if planned sales for April are 20,000. And for this example, let me show you that what you have to do step by step. And these are not mentioned in the previous one, but I will show you here, and then you can learn this in this slide. So what you need to do, you have to calculate your average stock for the season, and then you need to calculate the average monthly sales for the season. Then you can see the difference between A and B. Then you can calculate your basic stock. And this basic stock amount, which is discussed in the previous slide, will be added to your sales for the month. So there are 4 steps, but we can do it step by step. So let's go ahead and look at this. First one, average stock for the season is gonna be your sales for the season, and you learn this, right? Average stock for the season is gonna be sales for the season divided by stock turnover. And in this case, where is your sales for the season? Planned sale is 160, right? And your stock turnover is gonna be 4. So 160,000 divided by 4 is gonna be 40,000. So you wanna have this average stock for each month, right? And let's look at your average monthly sale. It's gonna be sales for the season divided by number of months in season. Here, this is for the season, right? So for the season, you have 6 months, right? So you can say like, sales for the season divided by 6 months. So you have this 26,667 as your average monthly sale. And now you have this average stock and average monthly sale. And you can do the step 3 if you know these two, the difference between these two. So basic stock is gonna be your average stock minus average monthly sales. So this is gonna be 40,000 minus 26,667. So now you have this 13,333 as your basic stock. So now you got the really important number here, because that's gonna be what you're gonna add to each month sales plan. Then you can get your beginning of the month stock for each month. So in this case, this is for the February. So it gave you the information about the planned sales for April, right? So beginning of the month stock for April, you have the sales for the month, your plan, which is 20,000. And then you can plus your basic stock. So 20,000 plus your basic stock is gonna be your BOM stock for April. And you can do the same for other months. If you have information given for other months, what you're gonna do to calculate your BOM stock is gonna be the planned sale for that month plus this basic stock. So that's gonna be same, like you always keep this basic stock throughout the season or throughout the year. Oftentimes that's gonna be 6 months plan, so we use that 6 months to calculate the average month sales and so on here. So oftentimes if you have this each month sale for the season, then you can add this basic stock amount to calculate your BOM stock. So this one, 20,000 plus 13,333, so you got this 33,333 as your BOM stock for where? April. And once again, this method compared to other method, and your number for the each month's additional stock will be different, but this one will be you're adding the same amount of the basic stock to each month's planned sale to calculate your BOM stock. Okay, so that's it for today. You learn about how to calculate your stock turnover, and you also learn how to calculate all these beginning of the month stock and so on, and 2 methods. So you will learn different methods to calculate your planning stock next time, and also we'll talk about planning, the markdown. So that's it for today, and let's talk more about these planning stock and planning markdown the next time. And that's it.